We begin today the Gemara on Daf Ayin Ches Amud Aleph, the third line from the top of the Yamud. It said in the Mishnah, Afilahu ima b'mitacholo. So the husband threw the get to his wife, and it landed into her bed. Nevertheless, because we're talking over here about a bed that is in the husband's house, so she's not divorced with this. It's in the husband's domain. So she was never zeich in the get for herself. Omar Rava, so Rava says about this Mishnah, Loi shanu ela b'mita shaloi. When it says in the Mishnah that if the get is with her in the bed, that she will not be divorced, that's if she's in his bed. Aval b'mita shalah. But if she's in a bed that she owns, that belongs to her, she's in her own bed, then mugareshes, then she will be divorced, even though her bed is in the house that belongs to the husband. Tanya nami hachi, we learned this also in a Braisa. Rabbi Eliezer says, "B'mita shaloi ein mugareshes." If he throws her the get and it's in his bed, she's not divorced. But b'mita shalah, if the bed is her bed and the get goes into her bed, so then mugareshes, she is divorced. The bed is like a keli for itself; it's a place for itself, and she will be divorced with this. She was makabel the get in her own rishus. But the Gemara asks in this. Even if the get falls into her get, so it's her keli, should she be divorced when the bed is sitting in the house of the husband? This is kelov shalakeach. You have here the vessel of the buyer. We're referring to the woman here as the buyer. But it's all in the domain of the meicher, of the husband, which is the seller. It's in his house. So shamet mina, according to what we're saying here, Rava and the Braisa, Rabbi Eliezer, we can learn out from here, Kelov shalikeach b'rishos meicher. If you have a vessel of the buyer and it's sitting on the ground in the domain of the seller, kana lekeach could be kind of this through this. So Rashi here brings that this question is discussed in the Gemara Baba Basra, and there's an argument about this. Whether we say that let's look at the general place and it's the place of the meicher, so your particular keli in this place is not enough that you should be able to be kainit, or do you say no, but now it fell into your keli, even though the whole place in general belongs to the meicher, but the fact that it's in your keli is good enough. So over here we have a clear raya that it does work, and in her bed she would be kainit, she's divorced. So the Gemara answers, no, there's no raya from here. Because when it said here in the Braisa, and when Rav explained this, what they were talking about is the Gevoya Asara, that her bed is 10 Tvachim high. So if it's 10 Tvachim high, it's not considered Bechlal to be in the domain of the husband, of the Meicher. High, 10 Tvachim high is considered to be a complete Ishus for itself. It's not even, Rashi says it's not even called the Avir, it's not even in the airspace of the Ishus of the Meicher. Higher than 10 Tvachim is in a different airspace. So it's hers, a completely her Ishus. Frekte Gemara, that's regarding the top of the bed. It's higher than 10 tfachim. But v'ha'ike makim kare, there's the place of the legs of the bed that are positioned on the ground. So it's still positioned on the ground, and if so, how could you say that that she's not at all, her bed, her keli, is not at all in the rishus of the husband? Of course it is. The legs are positioned on the ground in the rishus of the husband, and still you're saying that she could be kaina her get in the bed. Answers the Gemara, no, that's the legs don't matter. Amakim kari lekapti inchi. Just that little area where the legs are, people are not particular about that, and the husband is considered to be a reshus for itself. So Rashi says that the point there is, because it's raised so high, besides the point we said before, that higher than 10 tfachim is considered to be a different reshus, below the bed, it's high enough that the husband could even make use out of the area below the bed. So it's mamish like two different uses. There's a use in the bed above. There's a use that you could use to store things and do things under the bed that the husband has. Either those little areas where the legs are that the husband can't use for himself. That's just a little obstruction. He doesn't care about that. So therefore, it's mamish like a different rishus that the isha will be kind of her get when it falls into her bed. Then the Mishnah says if he threw the get into her lap or into her basket, even if she's in the husband's house, she'll be divorced. So again, the Gemara discusses this from the same point that we discussed before. Amai, why is she divorced? Kelov shalikeach, it's the vessel of the lekeach, b'rishus meicheru, in the possession or in the domain of the meicher. And the Gemara's question, be'ikir, is from kalsa, from the basket, as we'll see here in the continuation of the Gemara. Amar Rav Yudah Mashmuel, so the Gemara gives a few pshatim for this. Rav Yudah Mashmuel says, "Kagoin shoyse kalsa tluya ba." The basket is not sitting on the ground in the husband's house. She's holding her basket and it's hanging on her body. So therefore, because it's hanging on her body, it's like it's bottled, it's like part of her body, and it's not at all considered to be in the rishos of the husband. Said the same thing. She's holding the basket and it's hanging, it's off the ground. But Rav Shimon ben Lakish says that you could say this answer, but you don't even have to say that it's hanging off the ground. Kshura, if the basket is tied to her body, even if it's not raised off the ground, even if it's not hanging, even if it's dragging on the ground, it's still going to be her own rishus. It's not considered to be the keli of the lekeach in the rishus of the moicha, as long as it's attached to her body. Ravad Barava says, that over here it's her basket that was sitting between her legs when she was sitting in the husband's property, in the husband's house. So she's sitting. She says she's sitting in a place wherever it is. That's she's sitting on the floor. So ben yarkiseh, between her thighs, over there it's not the husband's domain. Over there we don't say that it's her keli in the husband's domain. Ben yarkiseh is considered to be 100% her rishus, because we know the husband is not makbid on that place, that it's you're in my domain. That place the husband allows it to sit there, and it's for her. It's completely her domain. So if she put the basket ben yarkiseh, which the husband's b'chlal not makbid on, so the basket as well is completely in her domain. Rav Mesharshie barav Dimi Yomar. Over here we're talking about a husband that this is in a store of his, in a place where he sells these baskets, and there's a lot of baskets lying around. So the fact that she puts down her basket there as well, the husband is not makbid on that space, that, you're using my space for your basket. Since there are so many baskets around, so this basket, the husband completely allows her, gives it to her to be able to use that space over there. Some Rishonim actually say that the case, what the Gemara means to say is that she bought this basket from him. He's moicha kalsais, and she bought this basket from him, so therefore he's not makbid that she's using this basket for herself in this place. Rabbi Yochanan says, we don't need any of these akimtis. We don't have to give any of these answers, because mokim cheka kanila, just like the place of her lap is totally acquired by her. The husband is not makbid on this at all. So the same thing also, mokim kalsa kanila, the place of her basket, the husband is not makbid at all. That's the certain uses that she has for herself. These are small things. A small thing like this of a person's wife that she's using for herself, the husband's completely not makbid on this, and he gives it for his wife to be able to use that space completely for herself. So it's not considered to be a keli of the loikeach that's in the rishus of the moicha. This is something that the husband's totally not makbid. So therefore she's kinda in the basket just like in her lap.
Say the same thing about the bed.
That he's not makbid? I'm not sure you could say such a thing. A bed is a pretty large thing. Yeah, okay, but I understand the swat is similar, but still, it looks like by a bed you can't say that. It's too big to say such a thing. Amar Rava says, my time, the Gemara spells out the reason. My time with Rabbi Yochanan. What's the reason why Rabbi Yochanan says that a basket is like her lap? Lefisha eino the makbid loyal makim cheka. Because the husband, the owner here, is not makbid on the place of her lap, but loyal makim kalsan, the same thing also not on the place of her basket. So, some say that this applies to any moicha and lekeach, and some rishonim say that this has only been negate to a husband and wife. Tanya nami hachi, we learned this in the Braisa as well. Zor kelol letoich kalsa, threw the get into her lap or into her basket. Oy, the Braisa adds letoich kol dovashuka kalsa, anything else that's similar to a basket. Hareizu mugureshes, she'll be divorced. So we see over here in this Braisa that it doesn't say anything about hanging or this or that. It's just the fact that he threw, just like when he threw it into her lap, the husband's not makbid. And then when it adds, oy b'chol davish hu kikalsa, right? The Braisa is adding that to say anything that's similar, that's just small enough, that has a use that's small enough, that's similar to a basket, that the husband's not makbid on. Now what is that example? Kol davish hu kikalsa lasuye mai. What is that coming to add? Lasuye taske the ochlaba tamri. That she has a little taska, a sack, that's or something that she keeps her dates in it. So that's something small that she has for herself, and the husband is not makbid on that space. It's considered to be a complete space that he gives for her to use for herself. A husband said to his wife, here, take this document of a loan. Okay, so she thinks that she's getting a document of a loan. She finds the get behind the husband. And the Gemara is going to discuss exactly what this means, but that's the literal translation. And then she takes this document and she thinks it's something else. So now in both of these cases, when the husband gave it to her and said, this is your shtar chayv, or she found it and she took it, and then kaira, she opens up and reads it and she says, whoops, v'harehu gitta, this is a get. Einoi get. She's not going to be divorced unless the husband tells her clearly, here, I'm giving you a get. Has to tell her, she has to know, he has to tell her clearly that she's receiving a get. Now, various opinions in Rishonim why this is. Why we know that the get could be given to a wife even against her will. Why does the husband have to clarify to her hagitech? From Taisus here, it's mashma. The reason is because if she gets such a kind of document and the husband never tells her this is your get, then we have an issue of mishalcha v'chayzeres. It says in the Torah, v'shilcha mibeisa, get has to be given in such a way that he sends her off when she's not going to return. But if she's getting a document, not even thinking it's a get, she's going to return. The Rambam holds it's not because of that, not because of mishalcha v'chayzeres, but because when the Torah says v'kosav lo seifa krisus v'nosam b'yoda, from the lashon of the pasuk you see that he has to give it as a seifa krisus, and therefore he has to tell her she has to know that it's a get. Okay, now nosam b'yoda similar halacha. He gave her the get into her hands, v'hi yishena, and she's sleeping, and then niura, she wakes up. And kaira, she sees this document that her husband gave her into her hands when she was sleeping. And v'harei gita, she sees that it's a get. Ain't a get, it will not be a get, until the husband tells her that this is your get. So here, in both cases of the Mishnah, the Tan of the Mishnah holds that the husband could tell her this is your get even after he gave it to her. He doesn't have to take it back and then give it again and say this is your get. As long as the husband even now, clarifies that this is your get, she'll be divorced. Okay, we'll see a machlokes about this in the Gemara.
All the cases I had the Mishnah before, he throws it into the chotzer. It doesn't say anything.
No, but either he spoke to her about it before. Avdafka, he has to tell her, Mamish b'shash ma'aseh, that this is your get. As maybe he discussed with her before, but that a person gives his wife the get. It doesn't come out of the blue. He probably discussed it with her before. So she knows. All cases, she has to know that she's getting a get.
She doesn't say that.
Yeah. So the Gemara regarding the second case of the Mishnah. What did it say? That he took the get from behind her husband. In that case, when he told her now afterwards that this is your get, my have, what does it help? But over here, she's taking the get from the ground behind the husband. Now Rava said, we had early in the Masechta, if the husband puts down the get on the counter or on the floor and says, here, take your get. He said, it's nothing. Because the Torah says, "V'nosam b'yoda," he has to give it into her hands. She can't take it from another place. So how does that work here? Answers the Gemara, Eime, say the pshat in the Mishnah is sheshalfasay me'achayra. She didn't take it from the ground behind him. She took it from the husband himself. It was stuck into his belt, and she took it out from his belt. So she did take it from the husband herself. But it's not enough of an answer. In fact, the Gemara, shalfasay nami, even if she took it out of his belt, it's still not good. Habi'inon v'nosan biyada. The husband has to give it to her. It's not enough if she takes it from out of his belt. And Veleke, he never gave it. Answers the Gemara, leitzriche, must be the case here is the orak lochartse v'shalfase, that the get was in between in his belt, and the husband sort of leans over. He leans over with his hips to her in such a way that it makes it easier for her to take out, and that's how she took it out. That's considered to be enough of an action of a nasan that he gave it to you. Even if he didn't mamish physically give it to her, but he leans over his hips in a way that she should be able to take it out. That's the v'nasan. Tanya nami hachi, we learned this pshat in the Braisa as well. So the Braisa starts off with the first case of the Mishnah. He says, take this shtar chayv. And then the Braisa, when it brings the second case of the Mishnah, it doesn't say that she took it from behind him, but it says, sheshol fasay ma'achayra. She took it out from behind the husband, meaning from in his belt. So here, even though the Braisa does not mamish spell out that he had to lean over with his hips, but nevertheless, from the fact that it says shol fasay, and it does not say like our mission, stam motzai, that she found it, we understand that it means that she took it from him and he had to have leaned over to her. And then karasai, she reads it, vareu gittin, she discovers it's her get, ain't a get, it won't be a get until the husband will now tell her that this is your get. Divrei Rebbe, this is Rebbe's opinion. So again, the chiddush of Rebbe here is that even if he just tells it to her now, she'll be divorced. Reb Shimon ben Elazar says, Lo'ila meina get, it's not going to be a get in such a case. Achi yitleno heimena, the husband has to take the get back from her. And then, v'yachza v'yitnenelo, he has to give it again. V'yoymelai gitach, and has to give it again properly, telling her that this is your get. Okay, so here we have this machlokes. The Shainim explained the machlokes over here is Rebbe holds you don't have to take it back and give it again. Because when the husband says, hey gitech, after he gave it to her, it's like he's finishing the nesina then. It's like the nesina before was incomplete because she didn't know what she's getting. So then later he says, hey gitech, okay, so that's when the nesina is. But Rab Shimon ben Elazar says, no, you can't be mitzad of that. You have to do the whole nesina over again. Okay, now the Braisa brings the like we had in the Sefer of our Mishnah, the next case about when she was sleeping. So the same thing that if Nasna biyada, he gave her the get v'yishena, she was asleep, and then the Yura she wakes up, v'koira, and she reads it, v'reu git, it's her get, ein a get, at sheyemalei gitech, it's not a get unless he tells her now, this is your get. Divrei Rebbe. Rab Shimon ben Elazar omer, at sheyitlena emena v'yachsa v'yitnenelo. He has to take the get back, and then give it back to her again, v'yemalei gitech, and tell her, this is your get. Says the Gemara, we need the Braisa to teach us both of these cases, the machlokes of Rebbe and Rab Shimon ben Elazar in both cases, even though it seems to be a very similar halacha. If we would only say the machlokes regarding the first case, where he gave it to her, telling her it's a shtar chayv, or she took it from him when he leaned over to her. Over there, Rebbe says that the husband doesn't have to take back the get again and do another nesina, because she is in a situation where she could be divorced in this frame of mind. She's up. He could have told her, here, this is your get. So therefore, there is a beginning of a proper nesina. So if he just tells her now that this is for your get, so that completes it, and she's divorced. You don't have to give it back and do it all over again. But then I would have thought that if you gave it to her when she was asleep, she's asleep, and you can't divorce her. The Pashtus, the reason is because she has no das b'chlal. She has to be a bardas to receive the get. She's not lav basigrushihi, not shaykh to divorce her b'chlal. So in such a case, there's different perushim with Rishayim. Why when she's asleep she's not basigrushihi? So when she's asleep, so because she's not shaykh to the in of gerishin at all, here Rabbi maybe agrees to Rab Shimon ben Elazar that the whole first nesina was nothing. You have to start over the whole thing again. So that's why that's to tell me, even in that case, Rabbi holds that you don't have to give it back, you don't have to do it over again. And therefore we understand that the opposite also. That if it would only say the second case of the Braisa here, when she was asleep, I would have said, Baha, come Rab Shimon ben Elazar. Only here did Rab Shimon ben Elazar say that you have to take back the get and give it over again, because she was mamish asleep. Aval Bahach in the first case, maybe he agrees to Rebbe that he can just tell her now that this is your get. Therefore it says both cases in the Braisa. Omar Rava says, Kosav lo get. We had this exact halacha earlier in the Masechta as well, I think. Or similar to this. Okay, regarding Evet. Omar Rava says, Kosav lo get. He writes her a get, v'nosnai biyad avda, and he gives it into the slave that belongs to his wife. So just like you can give it into a property that belongs to the wife, the slave is like a property of the wife. Now, Yashan, if the case here is that this slave is asleep, and she's there guarding this Eved, then Harez a get. Then this will be a get. But Niur, if the Eved is awake, then ain't a get. It will not be a get. Why not? Because then you're putting it into a property that belongs to her, but it's not being guarded for her sake. The Eved is a bardas for himself, and he takes the document, and maybe he's taking it for himself. He's not holding it necessarily for the wife, for her. So therefore, if he's awake, she's not going to be divorced. So the Gemara asks on this, you're saying that as long as the Eved is asleep, and she's there, and she's guarding him for the fact that he's holding the get for her. So then it's just like a chatzah. So when the Eved is asleep, it's the same like a chatzah. But how could it be a get? Harei a get. Amai. There's another problem here. Chatzah mahalechasi, putting it into the hands of an Eved. So we have a halacha regarding a chatzah, that a chatzah that moves around, that's not stationary in one place, does not qualify for a chatzah to be kaina. And there's different sources for this, and according to most Rishonim, this is learned because chatzah is learned from a yad. just like a person's hand can't go away and can't walk around on its own, separated from the body, so too a chotzer, you can't be kaina in a chotzer that floats around on its own. And the example for that would be a boat that just floats around on its own. And the fish that get into the boat, you're not going to be kaina through this boat. The chotzer malechas like kana. Says the Gemara, well, over here he's asleep. So v'chi teime yoshan shani. Because he's asleep, so there's no issue of the fact that he would be walking around. He's asleep now. Answers the Gemara, but v'amar Rava, kol she'ilu mahalach leikana, anything that if would be going around, it won't be kaina. Aymed v'yoshiv, even if he's not actually walking around, he's standing in one or sitting in one place, still leikana. Because it's something that could walk around, it's still not compared to a yad that can't separate from a body, and you're not going to be kaina. So if the Eved is asleep, it's not good enough. He wakes up and he walks around. Answers the Gemara, the answer here is that this halacha that Rava said was only bekofos. If the Eved was tied up, and he's tied up, so even if he wakes up, he's not walking around anywhere. So therefore, it's not a chotza maleches. So from Rashi, it's mashma that the pshat over here is, besides the fact that he's asleep, he has to be kofos. They have both. On one hand, he has to be asleep in order that it should be mishtameres l'daita. Even if it was just kofos, it wouldn't be enough that it would be mishtameres l'daita, because even though the Eved is not going anywhere, but still, if he's awake and he's a bardas, he could be holding on to the get for himself. And then besides that, in order for it not to be a maleches, he also has to be kofos. He's in one place; he can't go anywhere. But the Rambam, the Rambam holds once the Gemara gives the answer of kofos. The very fact that he can't go anywhere, that's enough to explain why it's Saimish Tameres Ladaita, because he's not going anywhere with his get, and it's not Ma'aleches. So you don't need the previous answer of Yashan. One second.
Why is it so important that he can't move?
Because we learn it out from a yad, just like by a person's hand. A chotzer only works like a hand. Just like a hand has no ability or mind of its own to walk away from the body, so to a chotzer is only kaina if it's stationary in one place and it has no ability to go anywhere. Yeah. A shliach is a different thing. Shlichus is but the shliach does the ma'aseh gerushin, but and shliach Kabbalah is also kaina get. You're right, but over there it's a din of shlichus. By a eved or by a chotzer, it's not midin shlichus, it's midin yad, and by yad it has to be dafke not malach, something that's stationary in one place. What happens if she's standing in a Rishus Harabim? So now we're not even talking anymore about her chotzer. Through the get. If the get lands close to her, and we'll see in the Gemara what that means, mugareshes, then she's divorced. If the get lands, but it's closer to the husband, then ain't mugareshes. She will not be divorced. Mechzal mechza, if the get lands in a place which is half and half, and again, it will all be explained in the Gemara, so then it's a suffix, mugareshes, ve'ene mugareshes. She's divorced and not divorced, or machmer, both. The same halacha we just said regarding a get applies also by kiddushin. If a husband is throwing the kesef kiddushin to his wife, it lands closer to her, she's mukadeshes, closer to him not, and if it's in between, it's a suffix. And the same halacha is regarding returning the money of a loan that you owe. So the lender says, here, throw me the money that you owe me. And the borrower threw the money to him. The money landed closer to the malve. The lender was zeichen the money. You got paid back. If anything else if it got lost afterwards, you paid already. And now it got lost in his possession. But if the money landed closer to the loive, so then a loive chayiv. Then if it got lost, the loive is responsible for this. Mechza, and if it's in between, then shneim yachleiku. Then they split over here the loss of this, and the loive will only have to pay back half. Okay, so what is the Mishnah talking about? What does this mean, closer to her, closer to him? How do we define that? So we're going to have over here a few pshatim in the Mishnah. Hey, chidami karav loy, chidami karav loy. What does it mean closer to her, and what does it mean closer to him? Rav says, arba amay shalah. If the get lands within her 4 amis, zeh karav law. That's what the Mishnah meant when it said karav law. Arba amis shaloi, but if it's within his dalar amis, zeh karav law. That's considered to be close to him. So Rashi brings a Gemara in Bava Metzia that says that Chachamim were misakin, that the dalar amis of a person are kaina for him. Now that takana that Chachamim instituted was actually made for people not to come to fight. If there's a matzia that's found and 2 people are running to get it, so there's going to be a fight who's kainit. So Chachamim said that without grabbing it, whoever had it in his Daled Amos is the one that's kainet. So according to Rav, what the Mishnah here is teaching us is, even though this takana was originally made regarding a Metzia, but they extended that takana applies to every situation, including a get as well. As long as the get is in your Daled Amos, you're kainet. Another chiddush over here is, even though this whole concept of Daled Amos is only with the Rabbanon, and we're using this over here to be kaina get, that she should be divorced minat Taira, you're going to have to say that we're using here the koyach of hefker, bezn, hefker, that the whole Daled Amos itself becomes mamish like her chotzer. And therefore she's kainet just like a regular chotzer with the koyach of hefker, bezn, hefker. There's narichis that the Rebbe speaks about this inyan when we get to the koyach of Daled Amos. In a few places the Rebbe mentions this. One of the places is in Kuntris in Yana Shal Teiris Achsidis. The Rebbe uses this inyan of Daled Amos to explain over the inyan al Pichsidis, the koyach of the yichidisha b'neshama of a person that extends around this Daled Amos. It becomes like this chotzer. There are some Rishonim that say that Daled Amos doesn't become like a chotzer. The Daled Amos is kaina, even though it's not yechatzer. Just mitakanas chachamim. It said it's kaina without being a chatzer. But the Rebbe over there in the Sikhe comes by Arichas and explains, no, it has to be dafka inyan of a chatzer with a koyach of hefka, bez, and hefka, and therefore you kaina even the get. Okay, but now the Gemara says, based on Ras Pshat in our Mishnah, hey chidami mechza mechza. What did it mean when the Mishnah said half and half? Either it's in your Daled Amos or it's not in your Daled Amos. What's the half and half? Amar Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak. Rav Shmuel bar Rav Yitzchak answers, Kagain shoy shneim oimdim bar Amos. If they were both standing within the same Daled Amos, so then each one of them, that's the half and half. Each one of them can claim that it's in their Daled Amos. So over here it's a suffix if she's divorced or not. Asks the Gemara, what's the suffix? V'lechsi hai minayu kodim. Let's see who entered who was in this Daled Amos first. If it's in your Daled Amos and someone else enters after, so then you're the one that's kaina. It's your chatzer. So what's the suffix? Now if you'll argue and say the asa tarvai bad the adadi, they both enter together into this Daled Amos at the very same time, and therefore the Daled Amos actually belongs to both of them at the very same time. That can't be. It's impossible that it should be exact that he arrived into that same Daled Amos at exactly the same second. So it's impossible that's what the Mishnah means over here. So the Rishonim, the Taisvis here on Amid Beis, asks the question, what do you mean? Maybe that gufa is what the Mishnah is saying. Because he yefshel etzamtzim, so we don't know who entered into that Daled Amos first. That's the suffix, we don't know. So Taisa says it's mashma in the Mishnah, mechza mechza is not a situation where it's a suffix, that it's a lack of knowledge, that we don't know. And be'emes, someone was first. It's mashma in the Mishnah, the mechza mechza is a situation where alibe the emes, they both, it's mechza mechza, they both have a right to be zeich in it. And therefore the Gemara is asking, you can't say that they both came in the exact same second, and therefore they both have a claim that they were the ones that are zeich in it. Elam Rav Kahane, so Rav Kahane says, maybe we could say as follows: Hacha b'ches amis mitzumtzamis haskina. We're talking about an area of exact 8 amis, and the husband and the wife are standing on two sides of these 8 amis, and the end of the 4 amis of the husband and the end of the 4 amis of the wife meet right together. There's a line where it's right on the border of the 4 amis of hers and of his are together. And where's the get? The get and the get is right in the middle. Half of the get is in his Daled Amos and half of the get is in her Daled Amos, and that's where you have the suffix of its mechza mechza. Frek the Gemara, in such a case there shouldn't be a suffix at all. V'ha'agid gabei. If so, the get is half in the husband's rishus, so it's still attached into his rishus. In such a case, when it's still attached into his rishus, Rashi brings the nosan biyada means you have to give the get fully to her. You can't give the get half into her rishus. So in such a case, it's for sure not divorced. Elo says the Gemara, we must say that according to Rab, the Pshat in our Mishnah is as follows: Rab Yosef Damri Tavayu, that the suffix over here is hacha b'shtei kite edim askinan. You have 2 groups of edim that are saying 2 opposite things. Achas emeres karav loy, v'achas emeres karav lo. One group of edim is saying that I saw that the get landed closer to him, she's not divorced, and another group of edim is saying no, I saw it land closer to her, and that's the case of mechza mechza, where the Mishnah says it's megareshes ve'enim megareshes. So Taisus asks, and the Rishonim discuss, why wouldn't I say that there's a chazaka? She has a cheskas eish. We should go according to the chazaka to say that she's not divorced. Why is it saying that it's a suffix? So Taisus answers, Anachanami. Minat we should follow the chazaka, but this is midrabanan. There's a chumri midrabanan. The Gemara in Yevamah says, anytime by edim, anytime you have a suffix of trei or trei, Chacham will machmir that it's a suffix, and we don't follow the chazaka. Rabbi Yochanan, coming back to the pshat of the Mishnah, Rabbi Yochanan has a different pshat. Karev la shaninu. It says in the Mishnah, Karev la, closer to her. It doesn't mean dal damas. So what does that mean? Afilah me'ama, even within 100 amas to her, as long as it's closer to her. And the karev la shaninu, karev la means, what does it mean? Closer to him. Afilah me'ama, even within 100 amas. And therefore, it's as long whoever it's closer to, that's the one who's going to be kainet. So Rabbi Yochanan is being machadish that chachamim were misakin, that when it comes to a get, you can be kainet the get not only with dal damas, which is the usual takana. Chachamim were misakin even more. You can be kainet a get even as long as it's closer to you. It's considered to be like her domain. Hefke bez and hefke, and she's kainet through this. Now, why would chachamim misakin this particularly regarding a get? Because of mishumi guna, akila barabana. And or because we don't want it to be in a guna. Finally, the husband threw the get to her, she should be able to be kaina, even if it's very far from her. So there's some Rishonim say that the same thing is also in the Gemara before. B'chlal, the fact that we applied dal damas to a get is also mishum guna. Okay, so now the Gemara asks the same question. Yeah, true, but since the reason of dal damas is because the people shouldn't come to fight, so that reason only applies to a mitzvah. The fact that you apply it to a get, some Rishonim say, is also because of the reason of she shouldn't be in a guna. Hey, chidami mechzal mechze. What's the case of mechzal mechze? So here, Rabbi Yochanan gave a different answer. So some of Farshim say, really, Rabbi Yochanan could have given the same answer that the Gemara said before, that you had a contradiction of Edom about this, but he says another answer. Amr Rav Shemen bar Rabbe l'didim mefarshlim minei de Rabbi Yochanan. So Rabbi Yochanan himself explained to me as follows. Hu yachal l'shaymroi v'hi einach yachal l'shaymroi. If it's close to him and he could guard the get, it's close enough that he could guard it and she can't, then it's going to be zeo karev loy. That's considered to be close to her, to him. That is. He yachal l'shaymroi. If it's closer to her that she can guard the get, v'hu eini yachal l'shaymroi, and he can't guard it, zeo karev loy. That's considered to be closer to her. Shneim yichaylim l'shaymrei. If it's in a place where they both have the ability to guard it, or shneim ein yichaylim, or it's in the middle between them, but it's far from both of them in a way that none of them could really guard it. Zeo mechzal mechza. That's considered to be mechzal mechza, and it's a suffix if they're divorced. Amruach Rabbanan kamed Rabbi Yochanan mishmei Rabbi Yonasan. The Chachamim came and said this pshat that Rabbi Yochanan said in our Mishnah. They said it in the name of Rabbi Yonasan. Now, as Rashi brings, Rabbi Yonasan was originally from Bavel, and he came to Eretz Yisrael, where Rabbi Yochanan was in Eretz Yisrael. So again, they said, Amru Rabbanan kamed Rabbi Yochanan mishmei Rabbi Yonasan hachi amar. Hachi, that is. Sorry, Rabbi Yonasan hachi, like this. So Amar, Rabbi Yochanan responded and said, Yadin chaverim bavloi lefrushi ki hai taime. Do our friends from Bavel know how to explain a Mishnah like this? He was impressed that even in Bavel they had the ability to learn and explain a Mishnah this way. Says the Gemara Tanya Nami Hachi. We learned in the Braisa, like the Pshat that Rabbi Yochanan said. Rabbi Eliezer says, Kol shu karav lo miloi. A get that's closer to her than to him. That's where it landed. And then ubak kelev v'notloi. A dog came and took the get. Eine megereshes. She won't be divorced. Now, what does this Braisa mean? Eine megereshes. If the get did land closer to her, and afterwards a dog came and took the get away, she won't be divorced. Why not? Her entire life she has to guard the get. Now that she's divorced, who cares if the dog took it away? Elalav, it must be the pshat and the braysos, like Rabbi Yochanan said. Hachi kama, this is what the brayso was saying. Kol shekarev lo miloi. If the get is closer to her physically in the space, it's closer to her than it is to him. But v'ilu ba kelev v'notloi. But if a dog would come and want to take away the get, and v'hu yachal l'shaymrei, only the husband can stop the dog. But v'hi eino yachal l'shaymrei, she can't stop the dog from taking it. So Rashi explains, for example, the case over here would be that the get is physically closer to her, but there's water between her and the get. There's something separating her from the get that doesn't allow her to access this get. And the get is further away from the husband, but there's no water separating between the husband and the get. And the husband can go and get the get and stop the dog from taking it. So in such a case, she won't be divorced. So we see here, like Rabbi Yochanan said, that the point over here is that whoever is the one that can guard it, even if it's physically closer to her. But if the husband is the one that can guard it, so then she won't be mugareshes.
It's like two things together.
Huh?
It has to be korev and shama.
No, but the karev, what he's saying here is the karev consists just of the fact of who could guard it. That's what he's saying here. Right? The first point Rabbi Yochanan said before is not like Rav, that it has to be dafka dal rames, it could be even 100 amas. But the main thing is the shmira. Who is the one that can guard it? That's what you see here from this brayso. Sagt the Gemara weiter, Amalei Shmuel Rav Yehuda. Shmuel tells Rav Yehuda, Shinene, sharp one. And here, according to Rashi's pshat in the Gemara, Shmuel is coming to say a third pshat in our Mishnah. What's the shear when it said karayv? It has to be the one that it's close to. Kadeshet teshuach v'tetleno. If you could bend down and take it, that's how close I has to be to her for her to be divorced. This is even closer than Dalet Amos. That's what the Mefarshim say. Dalet Amos not necessarily could you bend down and take it. So by a get, we're more machmer than it is by a mitzvah. It has to be close enough that you can bend down and take it. But then he added, v'at le'tavid ovdeh, but nevertheless, you shouldn't paskin this way that she should be divorced, ad the mati gittin yada, unless the husband placed it into her hands. There was a story that happened like this, that the husband threw the get, and it was close enough that she could bend down and take it, but nevertheless, husband passed away without children, and they said that we machmer that she needs chalitza, and she wasn't considered to be fully divorced. The Mishnah then said, we apply the same thing regarding kedushin. This halacha that it said in our Mishnah that your kaina, when it's closer to her, that's only for Gittin. But v'loi l'dava acher. But not for anything else. So the Gemara right away asks, Eisvei Rabbabe l'Ravasi. So Rabbabe asked Ravasi about this, but it said v'chein le'yin kedushin. It says clearly in the Mishnah that kedushin, the halacha applies as well. Answers the Gemara, no, Kedushin yes, because Shani Hossam, Kedushin is different. The Chsiv, the Yotza, V'hoisa. By Kedushin, we compare it to a get, and the Pasuk, it compares it to, so the same halacha applies. But regarding anything else to be kind of, like if you want to give back money for a loan, there it will not apply. So that the Gemara asks, but Eisvei, the Mishnah continues and says, V'chein le'inyan ha'chayv, the same thing regarding a chayv. Zraik li chayvi, if the malva says, throw me back the money of my loan, v'zark kailoin, he threw it to him, karev l'malva, if it's closer to the malva, zocha ha'loive. That's the gersa we have in our Gemara. It should be really zocha ha'malva, like we had in the Mishnah. So the malva is zeiche, because it's closer to him. Or even if you guide us the word loive, what it means is the loive merits in the sense that it's returned already. So now it's not his responsibility anymore. Karev l'loive. So if it was closer to the loive, then a loive chayiv. If it got lost, it's still the loive's responsibility. Mechza al mechza. If it was half and half, shneim yachloiku, then they split it. So we see the Mishnah says it applies even by a loan. How could he say that we don't apply this to anything other than Gittin and Kedushin? Answers the Gemara, even though the Mishnah brought it by a loan, but it's in a specific case. Hachi b'maya skinon. The case of here is the Amalei. The Malva clearly said, Zroik li chayvi, throw the loan to me, and then he added viti pater, and you'll be pater, because he clearly spelled out that I'm meichel, that if it ends up getting lost before it comes into my hands, you'll be pater. That's why by a loan this is considered to be returned alone. But otherwise, just throwing it if it's closer to him, it's not good enough. If he didn't clearly say that you'll be pater. If the Malva clearly said that you'll be potter, so Maila Memra. What's the chiddush that it works over here? It's not similar to the Reisha by the Get and Kedushin, where you're saying this chiddush here that it works Karev law. So what's the chiddush? He clearly said you potter. That's the Gemara Leit Tzricha. The case over here is not. No, he didn't say beferish you potter. Rather, what did he say? The Amalei, he told the Leive, Zroik li chayvi, throw me back the money for the loan, b'teiras gittin, like the halacha of a get. So he didn't clearly say it's Michael, but he said, similar to the halacha of the get that you would be Zeiche in this way, I accepted that I'll be Zeiche in this way. Asks Gemara, but Vakati Maila Memra, the question still remains. What's the Chiddush? If you clarify that he's ready to be Zeiche and to accept it this way, so why should it not work? Answers the Gemara, because with this language, when he says, B'teiras Gittin, Ma the time, I would think to say, Matzi Amalei, could then turn around and tell the Leive, B'shatani bach. I was playing around with you. I'm telling you, you're returning a loan to me like giving me a get. What kind of a get is this? So Kamash Malan, so we say, no, he wasn't playing around that it's like a get. What he was saying was like the halacha of a get, that I'll be Zeiche in it and it won't be your responsibility. Amar Rav Chisda said another halacha, get biyoda, that what happens if the husband gives her the get and it's in her hands already? But umishicha biyode, there's a string attached. Here's where the expression comes, you give it without any strings attached. He gives her the get, but there's still a string attached in the husband's hand. Is she divorced or not? If the husband with that string could pull the get back to himself, she's not divorced because it's not completely v'nosan biyada, like we had before. Rashi said when it's still partially in his rishos. But v'mlav, if with that strings he can't pull it back, then mugareshes. She fully has it. He has no power to take it back, so she's divorced. My time being in krisis, veleka has to be complete krisis. He has to give it to her 100% completely. And if you could pull it back, so here it's mashma. The issue is not only like before when it's half in his rishos, v'nosan, he didn't give. Even if he gave it completely, it's 100% in her hands. But the very fact that he could pull it back out of her rishos, it's not completely krisis, not cut off from him. Veleka. Rav Yehuda says another halacha. He placed the get into her hands. Usually a person holds their hands. You hold your hands like this and your fingers are facing upward. And the get goes into the hand. V'zar Kelani threw the get to her and her fingers are bent like outwards, like this, sloping down. So then Afa Pishigia get liyada, even if the get fell into her hands, she won't be divorced. Okay, because the get falls into her hands, but then it falls out right away. Why is that a problem? Even if it falls out, the get falls out. Where does it fall to? It falls down on the ground right near her into her dal damas, and in her dal damas she's kaina as well. Answers the Gemara, no, what happened over here is, the get fell out of her hands, and as soon as it fell out of her hands, a fire came or something came, a wind came, it never landed into her dal damas. So it didn't fall down into her dal damas. So therefore she won't be divorced. Even if it doesn't land into the dal damas, even if it's not on the ground of the dal damas, the airspace of the dal damas, she should be kind of with this. Are you going to say maybe the airspace doesn't work? Says the Gemara, Tifshai the boy of Rabbi Lazar. So if so, we should be able to answer the boy of Rabbi Lazar. What was his boy? Arba Amish Amru when Chachamim instituted the dal damas kind of for a person. Yeshlen Aver or Yelen Aver. Does that include the airspace or not? Do we say Chachamim made the takana that for a mitzvah, which is on the ground, that people shouldn't come to fight? It's not regarding the aver. Or do we say, no, once they said dal damas, they included the aver as well? So tifshay de'elen aver. Over here from this halacha of Rav Yehuda, I see that the airspace you're not kaina, and therefore if it falls out of her hands in the airspace and it never lands, she won't be kaina to get. And says the Gemara, this case is what Rav Yehuda said is halacha is different. Hacha b'maya skinon by medes lagav hanor. She's standing right by a river. So when it goes out of her hands, even though it's in the airspace, but the meikara leibutkai, when it leaves in her hands, even in the airspace, where's it going to? It's going to a river. Even the svara to say that the aver of the daldamas of a person is kaina, that's in the aver where it's going to land for you. But over here, where it's in the air, it's already destined to get destroyed because it's going into the river. In such a case, for sure, the airspace of the daldamas is not going to be kaina.